Good morning. Welcome to Eat, Breathe, and Pray. It is Thursday morning, January 9th, 2025, and it is 6:15 in the morning. And we are here for our Through the Bible in 1 Year reading. Today's reading is Joshua chapters 6 through 10. And so I'm just going to click on this one. Now Jericho was tightly shut because of the sons of Israel. No one went out and no one came in. And Yahweh said to Joshua, See, I have given Jericho into your hand, with its king and the valiant warriors. And you shall march around the city, all the men of war, circling the city once. You shall do so for 6 days. Also, seven priests shall carry seven trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. Then on the seventh day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. And it will be that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down beneath itself. And the people will go up, every man straight ahead. So Joshua the son of Nun called the priests and said to them, Carry the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests carry 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of Yahweh. Then he said to the people, Go forward and march around the city, and let the armed men go on before the ark of Yahweh. And so it happened that when Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before Yahweh passed on forward and blew the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of Yahweh came after them. And the armed men went before the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard came after the ark, while they continued to blow the trumpets. But Joshua commanded the people, saying, You shall not shout, nor let your voice be heard, nor let a word proceed out of your mouth, until the day I tell you, Shout, then you shall shout. So he had the ark of Yahweh taken around the city, circling it once. Then they came into the camp and spent the night in the camp. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and the priests carried the ark of Yahweh. And the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of Yahweh went on continually and blew the trumpets. And the armed men went before them, and the rear guard came after the ark of Yahweh, and they continued to blow the trumpets. Thus, the second day they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. They did so for 6 days. Then it happened that on the seventh day they rose early at the breaking of dawn and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. Only on that day they marched around the city 7 times. Now it happened that on the seventh time the priests blew the trumpets, and Joshua said to the people, Shout, for Yahweh has given you the city, and the city shall be devoted to destruction. It and all that is in it belongs to Yahweh. Only Rahab the harlot and all who are with her in the house shall live, because she hid the messengers whom we sent. But as for you, only keep yourselves from the things devoted to destruction, lest, as you are devoting them to destruction, you also take some of the things devoted to destruction, and make the camp of Israel devoted to destruction, and bring trouble on it. But all the silver and gold and articles of bronze and iron are holy to Yahweh. They shall go into the treasury of Yahweh. So the people shouted, and the priests blew the trumpets. And when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted with a great shout, and the wall fell down beneath itself, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight ahead, and they took the city. And they devoted to destruction everything in the city, both man and woman, young and old, and ox and sheep and donkey, with the edge of the sword. Now to the two men who had spied out the land, Joshua said, Go into the harlot's house, and bring the woman and all that she has out of there, as you have sworn to her. So the young men who were spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father and her mother and her brothers and all she had. They also brought out all her relatives and placed them outside the camp of Israel. But they burned the city with fire, all that was in it. Only the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house of Yahweh. However, Rahab the harlot and her father's household and all that she had, Joshua preserved alive. And she has lived in the midst of Israel to this day, for she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. Then Joshua made them swear out an oath at that time, saying, Cursed before Yahweh is the man who rises up and builds this city Jericho. With the loss of his firstborn he shall lay its foundation, and with the loss of his youngest son he shall set up its gates. So Yahweh was with Joshua, and the report about him was in all the land. Chapter 7. But the sons of Israel acted unfaithfully in regard to the things devoted to destruction. Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, from the tribe of Judah, took some of the devoted things. Therefore the anger of Yahweh burned against the sons of Israel. Now Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Bethaven, east of Bethel, and said to them, Go up and spy out the land. So the people went up and spied out Ai. Then they returned to Joshua and said to him, Do not have all the people go up. Only about 2,000 or 3,000 men need to go up to strike down Ai. Do not have all the men toil up there, for they are few. So about 3,000 men from the people went up there, but they fled from the men of Ai. And the men of Ai struck down about 36 of their men, and pursued them from the gate as far as Shebarim, and struck them down on the descent. So the hearts of the people melted and became as water. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell to the earth on his face before the ark of Yahweh until the evening, both he and the elders of Israel, and they put dust on their heads. Joshua said, Alas, O Lord Yahweh, why did you ever bring this people over the Jordan, only to give us into the hand of the Amorites, to make us perish? If only we had been willing to live beyond the Jordan. O Lord, what can I say, since Israel has turned their back before their enemies? And the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land will hear of it, and they will surround us and cut off our name from the earth. And what will you do for your great name? So Yahweh said to Joshua, Rise up. Why is it that you have fallen on your face? Israel has sinned, and they have also trespassed my covenant which I commanded them. And they have even taken some of the things devoted to destruction, and have both stolen and dealt falsely. Moreover, they have also put them among their own things. Therefore, the sons of Israel cannot rise before their enemies. They turn their backs before their enemies, for they have become devoted to destruction. I will not be with you any more, unless you destroy the things devoted to destruction from your midst. Rise up, set the people apart as holy, and say, set yourselves apart as holy for tomorrow, for thus Yahweh, the God of Israel, has said, there are things devoted to destruction in your midst, O Israel. You cannot rise before your enemies until you have removed the things devoted to destruction from your midst. In the morning, then you shall come near by your tribes, and it will be that the tribe which Yahweh takes by lot shall come near by families, and the family which Yahweh takes shall come near by households, and the household which Yahweh takes shall come near man by man. And it will be that the one who is taken with the things devoted to destruction shall be burned with fire, he and all that belongs to him, because he has trespassed against the covenant of Yahweh, and because he has committed a disgraceful thing in Israel. So Joshua arose early in the morning and brought Israel near by tribes, and the tribe of Judah was taken. And he brought the family of Judah near, and he took the family out of the Zerahites. And he brought the family of the Zerahites near, man by man, and Zabdi was taken. And he brought his household near, man by man, and Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zabdi, son of Zerah, from the tribe of Judah, was taken. Then Joshua said to Achan, my son, I implore you, give glory to Yahweh, the God of Israel, and give praise to him, and declare to me now what you have done. Do not hide it from me. So Achan answered Joshua and said, truly, I have sinned against Yahweh, the God of Israel, and this is what I did. I saw among the spoil a beautiful mantle from Shinar, and 200 shekels of silver, and a bar of gold 50 shekels in weight. Then I coveted them and took them, and behold, they are concealed in the earth underneath, inside my tent, with the silver underneath it. Then Joshua sent messengers, and they ran to the tent, and behold, it was concealed in his tent, with the silver underneath it. And they took them from inside the tent, and brought them to Joshua and to all the sons of Israel, and they poured them out before Yahweh. Then Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan the son of Zerah, the silver, the mantle, the bar of gold, his sons, his daughters, his oxen, his donkeys, his sheep, his tent, and all that belonged to him, and they brought them up to the valley of Achor. And Joshua said, why have you troubled us? Yahweh will trouble you this day. And all Israel stoned him with stones, and they burned them with fire after they had stoned them with stones. Then they raised over him a great heap of stones that stands to this day, and Yahweh turned from his burning anger. Therefore the name of that place has been called the Valley of Achor to this day. Now Yahweh said to Joshua, do not fear or be dismayed. Take all the people of war with you and arise. Go up to Ai. See, I have given into your hand the king of Ai, his people, his city, excuse me, and his land. So you shall do to Ai and its king just as you did to Jericho and its king. You shall take only its spoil and its cattle as plunder for yourselves. Set an ambush for the city behind it. So Joshua rose with all the people of war to go up to Ai. And Joshua chose 30,000 men, valiant warriors, and sent them out at night. And he commanded them, saying, See, you are going to ambush the city from behind it. Do not go very far from the city, but all of you be ready. Then I and all the people who are with me will come near the city. And it will be that when they come out to meet us as at the first, we will flee before them. And they will come out after us until we have drawn them away from the city. For they will say, They were fleeing before us as at the first. So we will flee before them. And you shall rise from your ambush and take possession of the city, for Yahweh your God will give it into your hand. Then it will be that when you have seized the city, that you shall set the city on fire. You shall do it according to the word of Yahweh. See, I have commanded you. So Joshua sent them away, and they went to the place of ambush, and they remained between Bethel and Ai, on the west side of Ai. But Joshua spent that night among the people. Now Joshua rose early in the morning, and mustered the people, and went up with the elders of Israel before the people of Ai, the people to Ai. Excuse me. Then all the people of war who were with him went up and drew near and arrived in front of the city and camped on the north side of Ai. Now there was a valley between him and Ai, and he took about 5,000 men and set them in ambush between Bethel and Ai on the west side of the city. So they set the people with the army that was on the north side of the city, and its rear guard on the west side of the city. And Joshua went that night into the midst of the valley. Now it happened that when the king of Ai saw it, the men of the city hurried and rose up early and went out to meet Israel in battle, he and all his people, at the appointed place before the desert plain. But he did not know that there was an ambush against him behind the city. And Joshua and all Israel pretended to be beaten before them, and fled by the way of the wilderness. And all the people who were in the city were called together to pursue them. And they pursued Joshua, and were drawn away from the city. So not a man remained in Ai or Bethel who had not gone out after Israel. And they forsook the city, leaving it opened, and pursued Israel. Then Yahweh said to Joshua, Stretch out the javelin that is in your hand toward Ai, for I will give it into your hand. So Joshua stretched out the javelin that was in his hand toward the city. Then the men in ambush rose quickly from their place, and when he had stretched out his hand, they ran and entered the city and captured it, and they quickly set the city on fire. Then the men of Ai turned back and looked, and behold, the smoke of the city ascended to the sky, and they had no place to flee, this way or that, for the people who had been fleeing to the wilderness turned against the pursuers. But Joshua and all Israel saw that the men had in ambush had captured the city, and that the smoke of the city ascended. So they turned back and struck down the men of Ai. And the others came out from the city to meet them, so that they were trapped in the midst of Israel, some on this side and some on that side. And they struck them down until there was no one remaining for him who survived or escaped. But they seized the king of Ai alive and brought him to Joshua. Now it happened that when Israel had finished killing all the inhabitants of Ai in the field in the wilderness, where they had pursued them, and all of them fell by the edge of the sword until they were completely destroyed, then all Israel turned back to Ai and struck it with the edge of the sword. So all who fell that day, both men and women, were 12,000, all the people of Ai. For Joshua did not withdraw his hand with which he stretched out the javelin until he had devoted to destruction all the inhabitants of Ai. Israel took only the cattle and the spoil of that city as plunder for themselves, according to the word of Yahweh, which he had commanded Joshua. So Joshua burned Ai and made it a heap forever, a desolation until this day. And he hanged the king of Ai on a tree until evening. And at sunset Joshua gave a command, and they took his body down from the tree and threw it at the entrance of the city gate, and raised over it a great heap of stones that stands to this day. Then Joshua built an altar to Yahweh, the God of Israel, on Mount Ebal, just as Moses, the servant of Yahweh, had commanded the sons of Israel, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of uncut stones on which no man had wielded an iron tool. And they offered burnt offerings on it to Yahweh, and sacrificed peace offerings. And he wrote there on the stones a copy of the law of Moses, which he had written in the presence of the sons of Israel. And all Israel, with their elders and officers and their judges, were standing on both sides of the ark before the Levitical priests, who carried the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, the sojourner as well as the native. Half of them stood in front of Mount Gerizim, and half of them in front of Mount Ebal, just as Moses, the servant of Yahweh, had given a command at first to bless the people of Israel. Then afterward he read all the words of the law, the blessing and the curse, according to all that is written in the book of the law. There was not a word of all that Moses had commanded which Joshua did not read before all the assembly of Israel, with the women and the little ones and the sojourners who were going among them. Chapter 9. Now it happened when all the kings who were beyond the Jordan, in the hill country, and in the Shephelah, and on all the coast of the great sea toward Lebanon, the Hittite and the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite heard of it, that they gathered themselves together with one accord to fight with Joshua and with Israel. Now the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and to Ai. So they also acted craftily and went out and traveled as envoys and took worn out sacks on their donkeys and wineskins worn out and torn and mended and worn out and patched sandals on their feet and worn out clothes on themselves. Excuse me. And all the bread of their provision was dry and was crumbled. And they went to Joshua to the camp at Gilgal, and said to him and to the men of Israel, We have come from a far country, so now cut a covenant with us. So then the men of Israel said to the Hivites, Perhaps you are living within our land. How then shall we cut a covenant with you? But they said to Joshua, we are your servants. Then Joshua said to them, Who are you, and where do you come from? They said to him, Your servants have come from a very far country, because of the fame of Yahweh your God. For we have heard the report of him, and all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites, who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon king at Heshbon, and to Og king of Bashan, who was at Ashtaroth. So our elders and all the inhabitants of our country spoke to us, saying, Take provisions in your hand for the journey, and go to meet them and say to them, We are your servants. Now then, cut a covenant with us. This bread of ours was warm when we took it for our provisions out of our houses on the day that we left to come to you. But behold, it is dry and has become crumbled. And these wineskins which we filled were new, and behold, they are torn. And these clothes of ours and our sandals are worn, because of the very long journey. So the men of Israel took some of their provisions, but they did not ask for the command of Yahweh. And Joshua made peace with them, and cut a covenant with them, to let them live. And the leaders of the congregation swore an oath to them. Now it happened at the end of 3 days after they had cut a covenant with them, that they heard that they were near them, and that they were living nearby among them. Then the sons of Israel set out and came to their cities on the 3rd day. Now their cities were Gibeon, and Chephirah, and Beeroth, and Kiriath Jearim. But the sons of Israel did not strike them down, because the leaders of the congregation had sworn to them by Yahweh, the God of Israel. And the whole congregation grumbled against the leaders. Then all the leaders said to the whole congregation, We have sworn to them by Yahweh, the God of Israel. So now we cannot touch them. This we will do to them, even let them live, so that wrath will not be upon us for the oath which we swore to them. So the leaders said to them, Let them live. Thus they became hewers of wood and drawers of water for the whole congregation, just as the leaders had spoken to them. Then Joshua called for them and spoke to them, saying, Why have you deceived us, saying, We are very far from you, when you are living nearly in the midst of us? So now you are cursed, and you shall never be cut loose from being slaves, both hewers of wood and drawers of water for the house of my God. So they answered Joshua and said, Because it was certainly told to your slaves that Yahweh your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land and to destroy all the inhabitants of this land before you. Therefore we feared greatly for our lives because of you, and have done this thing. So now, behold, we are in your hands. Do as it seems good and right in your sight to do to us. Thus he did to them and delivered them from the hands of the sons of Israel, and they did not kill them. But Joshua made them that day hewers of wood and drawers of water for the congregation and for the altar of Yahweh to this day in the place which he would choose. Now, chapter 10. Now it happened that when Adonai-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard that Joshua had captured Ai and had devoted it to destruction, just as he had done to Jericho and its king, so he had done to Ai and its king, and that the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were within their land. They feared exceedingly because Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all its men were mighty. Therefore Adonai-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, sent word to Hoham, king of Hebron, and to Piram, king of Jarmuth, and to Japhia, king of Lachish, and to Debir, king of Eglon, saying, Come up to me and help me, and let us strike Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and with the sons of Israel. So the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon, gathered together and went up with all their armies, and camped by Gibeon, and fought against it. Then the men of Gibeon sent word to Joshua to the camp at Gilgal, saying, Do not abandon your slaves. Come up to us quickly, and save us and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites that live in the hill country have assembled against us. So Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the valiant warriors. And Yahweh said to Joshua, Do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not one of them shall stand before you. So Joshua came upon them suddenly. He had gone up, marching all night from Gilgal. And Yahweh threw them into confusion before Israel. And he struck them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and pursued them by the way of the ascent of Beth Horon, and struck them as far as Azekah and Makkedah. Now it happened, as they fled from before Israel, while they were at the descent of Beth Horon, that Yahweh threw down large stones from heaven on them, as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died from the hailstones than those whom the sons of Israel killed with the sword. Then Joshua spoke to Yahweh in the day when Yahweh gave over the Amorites before the sons of Israel. And he said in the sight of Israel, O sun, stand still at Gibeon, and O moon in the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped, until the nation avenged themselves of their enemies. Is it not written in the book of Jashar? And the sun stood in the middle of the sky, and did not hasten to go down for about a whole day. And there was no day like that before or after it. For Yahweh listened to the voice of a man, for Yahweh fought for Israel. Then Joshua and all Israel with him returned to the camp to Gilgal. And these 5 kings fled and hid themselves in the cave at Makkedah. Then it was told Joshua, saying, The 5 kings have been found hidden in the cave at Makkedah. And Joshua said, Roll large stones against the mouth of the cave, and assign men by it to keep watch over them. But as for you, do not stand there. Pursue your enemies and attack them in the rear. Do not allow them to enter their cities, for Yahweh your God has given them into your hand. Now it happened when Joshua and the sons of Israel had finished striking them with a very great slaughter until they were completely destroyed, and the survivors, those of them who survived, had entered the fortified cities, that all the people returned to the camp of Joshua, to Joshua at Makkedah in peace. No one so much as lifted his tongue against any of the sons of Israel. Then Joshua said, Open the mouth of the cave, and bring those 5 kings out to me from the cave. And they did so, and brought these 5 kings out to him from the cave: the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. Now it happened that when they brought these kings out to Joshua, Joshua called for all the men of Israel, and said to the chiefs of the men of war who had gone with him, Come near, put your feet on the necks of these kings. So they came near and put their feet on their necks. Joshua then said to them, Do not fear or be dismayed. Be strong and courageous, for thus Yahweh will do to all your enemies and with whom you fight. So afterward Joshua struck them and put them to death, and he hanged them on 5 trees, and they hung on the trees until evening. Now it happened that at sunset Joshua gave a command, and they took them down from the trees and threw them down into the cave where they had hidden themselves. And they put large stones over the mouth of the cave to this very day. Now Joshua captured Makkedah on that day and struck it, and its king with the edge of the sword. He devoted it to destruction, and every person who was in it. He left no survivor. Thus he did to the king of Makkedah, just as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Makkedah to Libnah and fought against Libnah. And Yahweh gave it also with its king into the hands of Israel. And he struck it and every person who was in it with the edge of the sword. He left no survivor remaining in it. Thus he did to its king, just as he had done to the king of Jericho. And Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Libnah to Lachish, and they camped by it and fought against it. And Yahweh gave Lachish into the hands of Israel, and he captured it on the second day, and struck it and every person who was in it with the edge of the sword, according to all that he had done to Libnah. Then Horam, king of Gezer, came up to help Lachish, and Joshua struck him and his people down until there was no survivor remaining for him. And Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Lachish to Eglon, and they camped by it and fought against it. And they captured it on that day, and struck it with the edge of the sword, and every person who was in it he devoted to destruction on that day, according to all he had done to Lachish. Then Joshua and all Israel with him went up from Eglon to Hebron, and they fought against it, and they captured it, and struck it and its king and all its cities, and all the persons who were in it with the edge of the sword. He left no survivor remaining, according to all that he had done to Eglon. And he devoted it and every person who was in it to destruction. Then Joshua and all Israel with him returned to Debir, and they fought against it. And he captured it, and its king and all its cities, and they struck them with the edge of the sword, and devoted every person who was in it to destruction. He left no survivor remaining. Just as he had done to Hebron, so he did to Debir and its king, as he had done to Libnah and its king. Thus Joshua struck all the land, the hill country and the Negev, and the Shephelah and the slopes, as well as all their kings. He left no survivor remaining, but he devoted to destruction all who breathed, just as Yahweh, the God of Israel, had commanded him. And Joshua struck them from Kadesh Barnea, even as far as Gaza, and all the country of Goshen, even as far as Gibeon. And Joshua captured all these kings and their lands at one time, because Yahweh, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. And Joshua and all Israel with him returned to the camp at Gilgal. And that is our reading for this morning. That was Joshua chapters 6 through 10. Join us again at 12 noon for our midday prayer focus. And until then, go in the knowledge and the awareness of the presence of God with you, of His great love for you, of His Holy Spirit dwelling in you. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the people of Israel, and pray the promises and prophecies of Scripture over them. And pray without ceasing for whatever it is that God has called you to whatever He has given you influence over or authority over. Pray from that place of His presence, where you can hear His voice and know His heart, so that you know that what you are praying comes straight from the heart of the Father. And be blessed and be a blessing.